Hey guys, how's it going? It's your boy M.K.S here, back in another video. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and Jai India. I think that means long live India. Sometimes it's called Bharat, sometimes it's called Hind, and sometimes obviously it's called India, which is the English version. I think recently the country was thinking of changing the name to Hind or whatever. But anyway, this video or these videos, these series of videos are for all possible people who love India, those from the diaspora perhaps, those are obviously those of Indian background, including mixed race, part Indians like myself. As far as I'm aware, I'm a fifth Indian, I'll say. But anyway, I used to say I'm half Indian, but where a lot, my ancestry, I think, comes from Ireland, Scotland, France, India, and England, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, this is to celebrate Republic Day, and I hope Indians all over the world, and those with a soft spot for India, those who love India, even those, let's say, for instance, who are from Russia or Poland or America or elsewhere all around the world who love India, will enjoy these videos and contribute your 2 cents, i.e. your opinions and whatnot. Anyway, another thing I was going to say is I thought I'd move away from the football stuff a little bit because I've been covering almost all the videos I've covered except for one or two have been pretty much about football, so I thought I'd move on to something else because this channel is supposed to be about different things, mainly my political views and thoughts and whatnot. A concoction, big word for me, of many different things. So anyway, as it's Republic Day today, although the number 25 reminds me of republics, and yesterday if I was more organized I would have done like a few videos a day early. I'm hoping in February to talk about my dream for republics generally and how I hope for them to network together and how I'd love to benefit them generally, probably in one of my usual list form videos on the 25th of February. But anyway, here goes. So number one, I would love to bring India together as much as possible, and for all law-abiding citizens of India, whether they're Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, Christian, or any other religion, including Sikh, to come together and help each other and improve each other's way of life. If the nation could unite more together. When I talk about Asian nations, I normally like to say nation because it rhymes with Asian, but I'd love for Asia to be more united generally. And in this case, because it's India's Republic Day, I'm going to focus mainly on India. But I'd love for them to unite as much as possible and come together and support Indian projects like helping Indians to sell their items. I say items because alliteration, as if you've seen my other videos, I often say things in alliteration or patterns or whatever, alliterative form, as I would say. But anyway, yeah, so selling their items and things like that. Number two, I'd love for people to, including myself, to learn about India as much as possible. I've got to admit there are a few things I don't like about India, like having to respect your elders or things. I'm not a big fan of that. Or culture or tradition. I support India for different reasons, which I'm hoping to come to in these videos, possibly in part 3 or 4 or whatever, but or even part 2 or whatever. But I hope for people to learn about India, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and things like that, and how to help Indians. And I hope people will share their advice and ideas and things like that about how to improve India. People from India itself, I hope, will get involved in the comments and talk about how to improve the nation and things like that, and how Indians can come together and unite together more and take away some of those divisions, which I think are one of the negative things about the nation. But hopefully there'll be lots of positive things that can work together on. Number 3, I would love to support Indian YouTubers, TikTokers, and other content creators, and again, projects by Indians. And so if you know of any Indian YouTubers, please post their links in the description, and I'll try and subscribe to them, especially those from India itself, but also those around the world. If you're an Indian YouTuber or TikToker or whatever content creator yourself and you want support with your projects, please feel free to post those in the comments as well. And I thought of a few ideas last night, but I've probably forgotten quite a few of them already. But yeah, so I'd love for people to try Indian tea. I know that I myself am not a big fan of Indian tea, I've got to admit, but I'd love for people to try it and maybe make YouTube videos trying Indian tea and Indian items generally, and like giving them a score out of 100 or things like that, which I hope will promote Indian products, to be honest, Indian items and that kind of thing, in alliteration. Number 4, I've probably forgotten a lot of things for point number 3, but I'm going to move on. I'd love to know what Indians think of as like what freedom means to a lot of people in India. I'd love to go to India and interview people from India. I think that I'm going to say about the tourism. I'd love to go and support Indian tourism and go and visit India and support charities in India and support the poor in India especially. And number 4, I would love for my fellow Anglo-Indians and other Eurasians, Kristangs, and other Hapas, Hafus, and anyone who's part European and part Asian, like Eurasians or Blasians even perhaps, but especially Eurasians, to support India. And I would love for us to support their security. I I think we should have an agreement with India, nations like India in Asia, and possibly some in Africa as well, but especially in Asia, where we say, as long as you don't, we won't help you to invade any nation. So if you go to war with other nations, we won't, and we would probably condemn such actions and violence or whatever. But if you have to defend your nation, we will defend it internally as much as possible. So the braver Anglo-Indians, especially from India itself, obviously those from overseas would be harder to do, or some could even travel to help share ideas and things like that. But maybe in my naive, childlike mind, I was thinking like, in my naivety, as I say, I was thinking the border, because of the attacks that happened in Mumbai, 7/11, I think it was, and things like that. I can't remember what year it was, to be honest, but because of those attacks, it made me think like, what if people come from the border, what if Anglo-Indians who are brave, or even Eurasians generally from around the world, go to help India and say like, sometimes when we have the opportunity, we'll man the borders, I was going to say, but in other words, we'll look at security and like making sure people don't have weapons and things like that, and can't just come in and attack people. And like, I was thinking, what if some checked, like there was checkpoints and some checked at the security, at the borders and things like that, to make sure harmful people don't get in, and also basically to try and prevent potential invasions and terror attacks and any other threats, online and offline as well, and like I say, on the border. And I was thinking even like some could be hidden in trees nearby, or behind walls or things like that. There could be lots of checkpoints basically. But I was thinking that's probably, I say it's quite naive, because I suppose I've never really properly seen the Indian border, or the borders even, see what they're like. So I don't know how practical that is, and I've probably given the idea away now, so people could see. But yeah, the brave Anglo-Indians amongst us could do that, but I don't believe we should help any nations to invade others. I don't normally like support militaries, but if there was one in the world I'd support, or a few in the world, one of them would be India. I suppose, as long as they agreed, especially if they agreed not to invade any nation, but only to use it in defence, unlike invasive militaries. Moving on, I think I covered that point in a fair amount of detail, but if you have any questions, as ever, please fire away. Number 5, I would love for India to be part of a network called the M.I.S, which stands for those who haven't seen my previous videos, Malaysia, India, Indonesia, South Africa, and Singapore. Again, I've mentioned them in previous videos, but I'd love for my fellow Eurasians, possibly even mixed race people generally, especially Blasians, and in particular Eurasians anyway, especially to again help those nations to unite and improve their security and things like that. Monitor potential threats online, share ideas about how to keep people safe, keeping all law-abiding citizens safe, and uniting the people within those nations. So, for instance, in India, as I said before, like helping the nation to come together as one nation, whether Muslim, Hindu, Christian, Buddhist, or any other religion, including Sikh or whatnot, to all come together and share ideas and improve their neighborhoods, which will be beneficial to them anyway, their businesses, their ways of life, and things like that. And I'm sure most people who are Muslim, Hindu, or any other background want to see unity and peace, and their businesses thrive and be able to sell their items and things like that. And helping India and those other nations to sell their items around the world. And I hope they'll network together and trade together. And I'd love to also support Indians' ambitions, listen to Indians' ambitions and try and support them. Listen to and read, I take it literally, including in the comment section perhaps, Indians' ambitions, especially from India itself, and like how to tackle poverty and things like that. And also India possibly mainly working with those other 4 nations as part of a 5 coalition group, and also Asian and African nations and developing nations and former colonies and republics to network together, since there's a republic there as well, to share ideas, network together, trade together, and just generally support each other, help each other to sell their products and things like that. And I would love to support India to become a 5 or even 10 or even more $1 trillion economy, to basically as soon as possible and for as long as possible, and basically to be as wealthy as possible, possibly to become the richest nation in the world, or one of them, because simply for the fact that it was looted of a lot of its wealth and was historically the richest nation in the world and that kind of thing. So I hope they can get back to that sort of situation and I hope to network with others on that goal. Moving on, number 6, I did say I wouldn't mention too much about football. I hope I didn't promise not to mention it at all, but I dream that India will, as well as African and Asian nations more generally, will invest into Italian football. I've got to admit, when it comes to African nations, let's say a bit of a side note, I know Italian football can be very racist, and I suppose you could say we as a fan, I know I'm not Italian, but I support their football teams, but we as in Italian football do not deserve, or even the Italian country does not deserve investment from African nations. I know it's going a bit off topic, but in the sense of Africa, but maybe if they do invest, maybe that could improve relations and they could see what black people can contribute, especially from Africa and that kind of thing. But Georgia Maloney, actually, on that note, actually gets on quite well with Mr. I was going to say Gandhi, but Mr. Modi, even though she's described by many as a fascist. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but whether that's just slander or false news or whatnot. I hope it is false news. But anyway, I would love for India to invest in that network I talked about before. I would love for Malaysia to potentially invest in either Monza or Inter or AC Milan because of its, again, going back to what's it called? Alliterations. I was going to say acronyms. Alliterations, given that it begins with M, just like Monza, Inter, and Milan, AC Milan. Although that technically begins with A. But anyway, sorry, over-explaining things again. But I would love for India and Indonesia to invest in Inter Milan because they both begin with I, and South Africa and Singapore, respectively, to invest in either Sampdoria, Sassuolo, Salernitana, Spal, Anstroke, or Spezia. I suppose they can only invest in one, I think, by the rules. But maybe South Africa could invest in one of those nations' football teams, and Singapore the other. And on that note, I would love for all of those nations, all those 5 nations, to M.S. to. I often think it's, I forgot to say as well, I think it's quite an irony that it ends with SAS, because I would love for us to support those instead of like the British military or things like that. Obviously, there's a division called the SAS. But again, I would love to support their security in those 5 nations and across Africa and Asia, but especially those 5 nations, but not invading other nations. So as long as, hopefully they'll agree to be non-invasive militaries, so they won't invade other nations. They'll agree not to invade other nations as part of that deal. But yeah, sorry. I would love for African and Asian nations, especially those 5 that I mentioned, to have their own sovereign wealth funds and invest in Italian football and in Celtic and in each other as well, and across Africa and Asia and developing nations, like to invest in each other. So their sovereign wealth funds hopefully will invest into each other. I would love to see an African sovereign wealth fund which would be united, which pools their money and resources together and invests in Italian football and Celtic, and most importantly perhaps in each other and networking with Asia. And I would love for Asia to have its own sovereign wealth fund and Arabs to have their own sovereign wealth fund as well, specifically, which could pool their money and resources together. But again, maybe I'm being naive. Number 7, similar for Celtic, same sort of thing. I'd love for those 5 nations to invest in Celtic as well and help Celtic to become hopefully as good as possible. Again, I know I did say I wouldn't mention football, but I thought I would for those 2 points. Number 8, I'd love for people to talk about what they love and hate about India, what they think is negative and positive about India, and that kind of thing. I hope people share in the comment section. I hope people won't be too rude, but as I often say, freedom of speech and freedom of expression, that kind of thing. Number 9, I would love to support Indian poets, artists, writers, and again, projects from India, and architects, design, and things like that, and look at how they can network with the rest of Asia. And number 10, I would love to support young people in Asia, in India specifically, and also, I'll say those 5 nations, and also the 10% poorest people, especially Dalits, and look how we can empower them. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and as ever, I'd love to read what you think. If there are any bits you didn't like or even hated, heaven forbid, and if there are bits that you did like or even love, I'd love to know what you think either way. Peace and love. I am out.